I don't really talk about this anymore, and to be honest, I wish I could forget it altogether. But no matter how many years go by, that night still comes back in flashes whenever I drive through the woods or smell damp earth after a storm. I was 20 at the time, a college dropout trying to figure out what to do next. My best friend Derek had just gotten a new camera and was obsessed with urban exploration videos on YouTube. It was around 2017 when those abandoned places channels were everywhere. We both watched them religiously. Those grainy videos where people whispered into their microphones while sneaking into old asylums, hospitals, and forgotten houses. It was thrilling to watch, and Derek kept saying we should make one ourselves. He thought it would be easy content. We'd film, narrate a bit, throw in creepy background music, and upload it. I didn't want to admit it, but the idea sounded fun. That's how this started. Just two idiots with a GoPro and a flashlight looking for a good scare. There was this rumor in our small town about a property off Miller's Creek Road, deep in the backwoods. Everyone called it the Reed House. According to local stories, it used to belong to a family that went missing in the early 90s. Some people said they just moved away. Others swore the police found their car by the creek, but never the bodies. Nobody could agree on the details. The house had sat abandoned ever since. It wasn't even marked on Google Maps, just a clearing surrounded by trees and a gravel path that wasn't maintained anymore. That mystery was what hooked Derek. He wanted the real deal, not some dusty building in town with graffiti and beer cans. He wanted something untouched. And that was the Reed House. The night we went was late October. It was freezing. The kind of night where your breath hangs in the air. We packed 2 flashlights, a GoPro, and a backup battery, and I borrowed my dad's truck. We left around 10 p.m., taking the back roads to avoid being seen by any passing cops. The drive out there was longer than we expected, and the deeper we went, the worse the road got. The gravel turned into dirt. The trees got thicker, and even though we had the headlights on, everything ahead looked like an endless tunnel of branches and shadows. Derek had his phone out with a map, muttering about the coordinates he'd pulled from an old Reddit thread. Finally, after what felt like forever, he told me to stop. We were in a dead stretch of woods, nothing but the faint gurgle of the creek nearby and the occasional chirp of crickets. The road had narrowed so much that the truck barely fit. We got out, our boots crunching against the frost-covered ground. Derek pointed toward a faint trail that disappeared into the trees. "It's about half a mile that way," he said, already walking ahead. I grabbed the flashlight and followed. The trail was almost invisible, swallowed by weeds and thorns. The only thing guiding us was the beam of light from my flashlight bouncing off dead branches. I could hear the creek running close by, just out of sight. It was colder under the trees, and the wind made the branches groan like voices whispering above us. Every few minutes, Derek would stop and check his phone, frowning at the signal. "We're close," he kept saying, but I didn't see anything except woods and darkness. Then we saw it. Through the trees, a shape began to form. A 2-story house, half collapsed on one side, sitting crooked in a clearing. The roof sagged inward, and the windows were either shattered or completely gone. There was an old, rusted swing set beside it, barely visible under the overgrowth and what looked like a car buried in vines. My first thought was that it didn't look abandoned. It looked dead, like the forest had swallowed it and was digesting what was left. Derek was ecstatic, of course. He lifted the GoPro and started filming, whispering into it like one of those YouTubers. We finally found it. The Reed House. Nobody's been out here for decades. His breath came out in little white puffs. We circled around to the front porch, and I noticed something odd. The door was wide open. It didn't look like it had been forced, just hanging there, slightly tilted off its hinges. The darkness inside looked thicker than the night itself. I remember saying, "Dude, this doesn't feel right." But Derek laughed. "That's the point, man. Come on." He handed me the flashlight. "You lead." The moment I stepped inside, I felt the air change. It wasn't just colder. It was heavier, like stepping into a room that had been sealed for years. Dust floated through the beam of my flashlight, swirling like smoke. The smell hit me next. Mold, rotted wood, and something faintly metallic underneath it like old blood or rust. The floor creaked with every step. We moved through what used to be the living room. Furniture was still there, but everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. A couch leaned against the wall, its cushions ripped open and spilling yellow foam. A coffee table was overturned. There were picture frames on the walls, their glass cracked but still holding faded photos. I stepped closer to one. It showed a family of 4, smiling in front of the same house. A man, a woman, and 2 kids. The faces were faint, but their eyes looked almost real under the flashlight. Too real. I looked away fast. Derek was talking to the camera, narrating everything. So we're in the living room now. It's like time stopped here. This is crazy. His voice echoed slightly, bouncing off the walls. Then he said, let's check the basement. I turned to him, half laughing. You're kidding, right? But he wasn't. He was already looking for a door. We found it at the back of the kitchen, a narrow wooden door with peeling white paint. The handle was rusted, but it turned easily. The smell that came out was like something sour and wet. I shone my flashlight down the steps, but it barely reached the bottom. Just darkness. You really want to go down there? I asked. Derek smiled nervously, but he nodded. Just a quick look. For the video. The stairs groaned under our weight. My flashlight flickered once and my stomach dropped. When it came back on, Derek was already halfway down. I followed slowly, each step whining like it might break. The basement was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, and the floor was just dirt. There were old jars on wooden shelves, some shattered, some filled with thick, dark liquid. In the corner sat a single wooden chair facing the wall. What made me stop was the smell. It was stronger down there, almost unbearable. Derek crouched near the jars, filming. This is insane, he whispered. It's like someone just left this here. I was about to tell him to wrap it up when I heard something. A faint sound from behind the wall. It was a scraping noise. Slow, steady, like something dragging across wood. We both froze. I pointed the flashlight at the wall, but there was nothing there. Then it came again, louder this time. Scrape, pause, scrape. Derek looked at me wide-eyed. Maybe it's just an animal, he said, but his voice trembled. The sound stopped for a few seconds, and then, from somewhere deeper in the wall, something knocked back. 3 slow knocks. I swear to God it was rhythmic, deliberate. We stood there in silence, listening to our own breathing. That's when the flashlight went out. Pitch black. I smacked it a few times, but it didn't turn back on. Derek's camera light clicked on, casting a weak white glow around us. We should go, I whispered. He nodded. But before we could move, we both heard a voice. It came from behind the wall again. A soft, trembling whisper that said, "Don't leave." I felt my whole body lock up. Derek dropped the GoPro and the light hit the ground, spinning until it pointed at the chair in the corner. And for a split second, I saw something move in that light. A figure sitting there that hadn't been there before. Just a shape, hunched forward like someone crouched low with their head down. I didn't even think. I ran. I don't remember climbing the stairs, but I remember bursting through the door and tripping over the threshold, landing hard on the floor upstairs. Derek was right behind me, gasping, swearing under his breath. We didn't stop until we were outside, sprinting across the clearing toward the trees. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I didn't care. I just needed to get to the truck. When we reached it, Derek was pale, shaking uncontrollably. "What the hell was that?" he kept saying. I didn't answer. I just drove. The whole way back, we didn't speak. The only sound was the tires crunching against the dirt road and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. Later, when I finally caught my breath, I realized Derek still had the GoPro. He played it back while we sat in the truck on the side of the road, our hands trembling. The footage was shaky, but clear enough. It showed the basement, the shelves, the chair. Then the sound, the scraping, the knocking, the voice. It was all there. And when the light hit the chair, you could see it. A human shape, crouched low, turning its head toward the camera just as we ran. But what made my stomach turn was its face. It wasn't a person. It was smooth, completely blank, like someone had wrapped their head in wax paper. We deleted the footage that same night. Neither of us wanted that thing existing anywhere. Derek swore he wouldn't talk about it again, and we never did. But a few months later, he texted me saying he'd gone back, alone this time. I called him furious, but he didn't answer. The next day, his mom called me. She said he hadn't come home. They found his car parked on Millers Creek Road, door wide open, keys still inside. They searched the woods for days, but they never found him. The only thing the police recovered was his GoPro, half buried in the dirt near the creek. I still don't know what we saw that night or how to explain the sound that came from below us. Even now, years later, I can't walk through storm drains or underpasses without feeling sick to my stomach. I used to love exploring places like that. Abandoned buildings, forgotten tunnels, anywhere off limits. I told myself it was about curiosity, but honestly, it was about control. I liked being in places where no one else dared to go, places that felt like they shouldn't exist. That feeling changed forever after what happened under Ridgeway. It started because of my friend Tyler. He was the one who found the map. We were both 21, bored, and desperate to make our little YouTube exploration channel blow up. We'd done all the basic stuff, old schools, warehouses, half-collapsed barns. But Tyler wanted something bigger. He said he'd found this hidden system under the town's industrial district, a storm tunnel that connected miles of forgotten maintenance routes. He got the info from some sketchy Reddit thread, where people claimed there were sealed rooms down there, places the city never documented. One post mentioned that the tunnel had a door that wasn't supposed to be there. That line stuck in both our heads. It sounded like bullshit, but intriguing bullshit. So one Saturday night, we packed our gear, flashlights, masks, a GoPro, and a portable battery. The Ridgeway drain entrance was behind an old rail yard, past a broken chain-link fence that was barely standing. We parked about a mile away so nobody would see the car. It was early spring, but cold enough that our breaths came out in visible clouds. The air smelled like rust and rain. The concrete tunnel entrance was massive, 12 feet across, circular, covered in graffiti. The sound of water trickling inside echoed endlessly. Tyler went first, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Dude, this is sick," he said, his voice bouncing off the walls. I hesitated at the entrance, staring into that endless black mouth of concrete, before finally stepping in. The temperature dropped instantly. The sound of the city vanished behind us, replaced by dripping and our footsteps sloshing through shallow water. The walls were slick with algae. Every few feet there were rusted maintenance ladders leading up to sealed manholes. We walked for what felt like an hour, talking less and less the farther we went. Eventually the graffiti stopped. The air got stale. My flashlight flickered a couple of times, and I told Tyler we should turn back soon. He ignored me, shining his light on the wall. "Dude, look at this." There were markings, numbers carved into the concrete like coordinates. Fresh, not eroded. They ran in a line leading deeper down the tunnel. I felt uneasy, but Tyler was buzzing with excitement. "We're close," he said, grinning. Another 20 minutes later, we found it, the door. It was metal, maybe 8 feet tall, built directly into the wall of the tunnel. It didn't match the concrete structure at all. It was clean, too clean, like it had been installed recently. There was no handle, just a small latch and a faded symbol etched into the surface, something circular with a jagged line through it. "Told you," Tyler said, laughing under his breath. We found it. He filmed a quick intro for the camera, describing where we were before trying the latch. It didn't move. I was relieved, honestly, but then he pulled out a crowbar from his pack. "Tyler, don't," I started, but it was too late. He wedged the crowbar into the latch and pulled hard. There was a metallic snap, followed by a deep groan from somewhere behind the door. I'll never forget that sound. It wasn't just mechanical. It almost sounded alive, like something shifting. The door creaked open a few inches, releasing a burst of air that smelled like decay and stagnant water. My stomach turned instantly. We stood there staring into the gap. Beyond it, there was only blackness. I said we should leave, that this was a bad idea, but Tyler wasn't listening. He squeezed through the opening, his flashlight disappearing into the dark. I cursed under my breath and followed. The space beyond the door was unlike anything I'd seen. It wasn't a continuation of the tunnel. It was smaller, rectangular, lined with corroded pipes that disappeared into the floor and ceiling. The air was damp and suffocating. The walls were covered in black residue that looked burned. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. Even our footsteps sounded muffled, like the air itself was swallowing the sound. About 50 feet in, the hallway opened into a wider chamber. My flashlight revealed something that made my skin crawl. Rows of metal cages bolted to the floor, each about the size of a person. Most of them were empty, but a few had tattered cloths or what looked like bones inside. The smell was worse here, sharp and rotten. Tyler whispered, "Holy shit, man. What is this place?" I didn't answer. My brain was screaming at me to turn around, but my body felt locked in place. Then we heard something. A metallic clank from behind us. We both froze. It came again, closer this time, echoing through the hall we'd just walked. Tyler whispered, "Maybe it's the door closing?" But the sound wasn't mechanical, it was rhythmic, deliberate. Like footsteps, we turned off our lights. The darkness was absolute. We stood there, barely breathing. Then faintly we heard it, a sound like someone dragging metal across concrete. It was slow, scraping and getting louder. I felt something deep in my chest, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. Tyler fumbled to turn his light back on, but when he did, there was nothing there. Just the empty hallway stretching into black. "It's just echoes," he said, though his voice shook. We started moving back toward the door, faster now. My flashlight flickered again, and for a split second I saw movement at the edge of the light. A shadow ducking out of sight. "Tyler, move!" I shouted. We ran. The sound followed, faster this time, like metal claws scraping the walls. When we reached the door, it was shut. Tyler grabbed the edge and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. He cursed, pulling harder, while I shone the light down the tunnel behind us. That's when I saw it. Something crawling along the ceiling, long, thin limbs pulling a shape that didn't make sense. It moved wrong, like its joints were backward. The beam hit it for half a second, and I saw its face, or what looked like one. It wasn't human. Pale, stretched tight, with 2 holes where eyes should be. I screamed for Tyler to hurry. He jammed the crowbar into the door and yanked. The latch snapped again, and the door swung open just as the thing dropped from the ceiling. I caught a glimpse of its body. It wasn't a person at all. It was like a mass of limbs twisting over itself, skin gray and wet. It let out a sound I can't describe, somewhere between a hiss and a sob. We dove through the door and slammed it shut. Something hit the other side immediately, hard enough to make the metal shudder. Tyler was yelling, holding the door with his shoulder. The pounding continued faster, then suddenly stopped. The silence after was worse than the noise. We didn't wait. We ran. I don't even remember most of the trip back. Just the sound of water splashing under our boots and my heart hammering in my ears. When we finally saw the faint light from the tunnel entrance, I swear I almost cried. We stumbled out into the open air, gasping, covered in mud. Tyler sat down on the grass, shaking. "What the fuck was that?" he said. I didn't answer. There wasn't an answer. We just sat there, staring at the tunnel entrance, waiting for something, anything, to come out. Nothing did. Eventually, we got up and left. We promised not to tell anyone, not to post the footage, not to talk about it. I deleted my copy that night, but Tyler said he wanted to look at it one more time before erasing it. A week later, he stopped answering my texts. I went by his apartment, but he wasn't home. His roommate said he'd left the night before, saying he was going back to get proof. I begged him to call the cops, but by the time they searched the area, there was no sign of him. His car was still parked near the rail yard, doors locked, camera missing. They searched the tunnels for days, but nobody found anything. A month after that, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. I plugged it in, and there was only one file, Ridgeway Last.move. I don't know how whoever sent it got my address, and I wish I'd never watched it. The video starts with Tyler walking into the tunnel alone. The GoPro light flickers as he reaches the metal door. It's already open this time. He's whispering to himself, saying things like, "It's just concrete, there's nothing here." He goes through the door, deeper into the hall. The cages are still there, but this time some of them aren't empty. Shapes move inside them. Slow, twitching shapes that look human but aren't. He keeps walking, breathing hard, until he stops at something in the middle of the chamber. The camera shakes and I can barely make it out, but it looks like another door, smaller, made of wood. Tyler reaches for it. There's a voice behind him, faint, echoing through the chamber. I can't make out the words. He turns the camera, and for a moment, the light catches something standing at the far end of the hall. It's the same thing we saw that night. Tall, wrong, skin gray and stretched. But now there are more of them. 3, maybe 4, hanging from the ceiling like bats, their heads tilted toward him. The footage shakes violently, the light jerking across the walls as Tyler runs. You can hear him sobbing, gasping for breath. The camera drops, landing on its side, and you see his legs kicking as something drags him backward into the dark. Then it cuts out. I grew up in a small town in central Kansas, the kind of place where the sky feels too big and everything smells like dirt and diesel. There wasn't much to do back then. No malls, no theaters, just long stretches of fields and the same 4 streets that made up our downtown. So like most teenagers with too much time and too little sense, we went looking for our own kind of fun. Sometimes it meant sneaking into old buildings. Sometimes it meant driving out to the middle of nowhere to scare each other with ghost stories. But one night, that stupid thrill-seeking turned into something I've never been able to forget. It started when my friend Jesse brought up the Black Hollow farm. The name alone made everyone in our group react. Everyone had heard something about it. It sat on the edge of the county line, surrounded by overgrown wheat fields and broken fencing. The story was that it used to be owned by a family called the Crawfords, who raised cattle there until the late 80s, when a series of fires burned most of the property down. After that, nobody lived there again. Locals said the place was haunted, that the family didn't die in the fire. They vanished. People said at night you could still hear cows screaming, or see figures walking through the fields. We all thought it was bullshit, but Jesse swore his cousin had gone there once and saw something moving inside the old barn. Naturally, that was enough to get everyone hyped. There were 5 of us that night, me, Jesse, his girlfriend Mel, and 2 others, Aaron and Chris. We took Aaron's truck and left around 9 p.m., planning to camp out near the property line and film a short exploration video. Jesse wanted to post it online as one of those urban legend challenges. The road to Black Hollow was basically just dirt, uneven and narrow, cutting through endless flat land. The only light came from the moon and our headlights bouncing off corn stalks that swayed in the wind. The GPS stopped working halfway there, which should have been our first warning, but Jesse claimed he remembered the way. After a long, bumpy ride, we saw the outline of the farmhouse in the distance. The main structure was still standing, but just barely, a tall, skeletal shape against the horizon with a collapsed roof and boarded windows. There was also a barn a little further back, its doors half hanging open. We parked just off the road, killed the engine, and stepped out. The air was heavy with the smell of dirt and decay. It was so quiet that the sound of the wind through the grass made me nervous. We crossed the fence easily, it was already broken in several places, and walked toward the house. Jesse led the way, holding a flashlight and talking into his phone like he was narrating. "This is it," he said, his voice low and dramatic. "The infamous Black Hollow farm, where the Crawfords burned to death or disappeared depending on which story you believe." He chuckled under his breath, but nobody else laughed. I was staring at the farmhouse. Up close, it looked even worse. The wood was blackened, twisted, almost melted in some places. Every window was shattered. The front door was still attached, but barely. It creaked open with the wind, slamming shut every few seconds like it was breathing. Mel didn't want to go inside. "Let's just check the barn," she said, hugging her jacket tight. "That place looks like it's going to collapse." Jesse rolled his eyes, but eventually agreed. The barn was about 100 yards behind the house, surrounded by dead grass and rusted farm equipment. The doors groaned as we pulled them open. The air inside was cold and stale, and the beam of our flashlights picked out dust swirling through the air like fog. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't just old wood and hay. It was something else, sharp and rotten, like an animal that had been dead too long. "Jesus," Aaron muttered, covering his nose. "What the hell is that?" Jesse shrugged, trying to act brave, but I could see his hands trembling. There were still a few metal pens inside, most of them broken or empty. One of them had something inside it. What looked like bones, maybe a deer or a cow picked clean. I told myself it was probably animals scavenging, but deep down I didn't believe it. We wandered deeper into the barn. There was a ladder on one side leading up to the loft. Chris climbed it, flashlight in hand, and called down, "There's some old equipment up here. And a lot of, wait, what the fuck?" His light flickered, and for a moment I saw his face go pale. "What is it?" I called. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "There's something carved into the wood up here. Words or something." Jesse told him to read it, so he did. His voice shook. "It says, 'They come from the field.'" A silence fell over all of us. The wind picked up outside and the doors slammed shut behind us. Mel screamed, spinning around, but it was just the wind. Or at least that's what we told ourselves. We decided to get out of there and check the house instead, mostly because Jesse refused to leave without real footage. The farmhouse's front door groaned as we pushed it open. The smell inside was even worse than the barn. Mold, ash, and something else underneath it, something chemical. The floorboards sagged under our weight and the wallpaper had peeled away in long, curling strips. There were black scorch marks along the ceiling and strange stains on the walls that looked too dark to be soot. We spread out, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. In the living room there was still furniture, what was left of it. A couch half melted into the floor, a burned-out piano, and a wooden rocking chair that swayed slightly every time the wind passed through. Aaron crouched near the fireplace and picked something up, a photo frame. The glass was cracked, but the picture inside was still visible. It showed a man, a woman, and two small boys standing in front of the same house. The weird part was the eyes. They were all scratched out. Not burned, but carved out with something sharp. Aaron dropped it instantly. Upstairs, the air was heavier. Each step groaned, threatening to give out. I stayed close behind Jesse, while the others followed hesitantly. At the top of the stairs was a hallway with 4 doors all open. We checked the first one. It was a child's room. Toys were still scattered across the floor, melted and warped from the heat. On the wall, there was another set of carvings similar to what Chris had seen in the barn. These ones read, "They wait beneath." I didn't want to keep going. Something about those words made my skin crawl, but Jesse pushed forward, whispering into his phone camera. "We're upstairs now," he said. "There's writing on the wall. Some kind of message. This is insane." He sounded nervous now, the confidence from before fading fast. We checked the next 2 rooms, nothing but charred furniture and debris. The last door at the end of the hall was closed. Jesse tried the handle. It was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in years. When he pushed, it groaned loudly before swinging inward. The smell that hit us was unbearable. My flashlight flickered, and in that momentary strobe of light, I saw something that made my stomach turn. There were shapes on the floor. Not objects, shapes. Human shapes, blackened and fused into the floorboards, like the fire had burned them alive where they stood. Their faces were warped, mouths open in silent screams. Mel started crying, begging Jesse to stop filming, to just leave. He turned to her, ready to argue, but then we all heard it, a sound from outside. It was faint at first, a soft rustling like something moving through the cornfields behind the house. Then another, and another. Footsteps, dozens of them. Slow, uneven, dragging through the dirt. We froze. "Maybe it's animals," Chris whispered. But even he didn't believe it. The sounds grew louder, closer, until they seemed to surround the house. I went to the window and shone my flashlight out across the field. For a moment I saw nothing. Then I saw them. Figures, tall, thin, moving between the stalks. There must have been 10, maybe more. They weren't walking, they were swaying, gliding almost, their movements jerky and wrong. I couldn't see their faces, but I could see their arms, too long, hanging almost to the ground. I whispered, "We need to go now." Jesse ran downstairs, yelling for everyone to move. We bolted after him, the sounds outside getting louder, soft, wet footsteps slapping against the dirt, coming closer. When we reached the front door, it slammed shut before we could grab it. I don't know if it was the wind or something else, but it hit so hard the glass shattered. The lights from our flashlights flickered wildly, casting shadows that moved across the walls even when we stood still. Aaron grabbed the handle and yanked, but it wouldn't budge. "It's stuck," he shouted. The sound outside was right against the walls now, slow, scraping, dragging. Something brushed against the window, leaving a long, dark smear. Mel screamed again. Chris turned toward the back of the house, yelling that there was another door through the kitchen. We followed him, tripping over debris, barely able to see. The kitchen door was still there, but part of the wall had collapsed around it. We squeezed through one by one into the freezing night air. The moment I stepped outside, I felt it, something watching us. I turned toward the field. The figures were closer now, emerging from the corn. Their skin was pale, almost gray, and their faces were stretched and featureless, smooth where eyes and mouths should have been. We ran. No plan, no direction, just away from that house. I could hear them following, the sound of their feet in the dirt faster than they should have been. Jesse tripped and fell, screaming for help. I turned back, reaching for him, but something grabbed his ankle and pulled him toward the field.